Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Wednesday morning, December 20th. You know what that is? What is it? Winter solstice? I don't know. We'll check with our solstice expert, Dudley Dawson, hogville.net in just a minute. But tomorrow officially starts winter. But today is National Signing Day, high school football. Got that going on. Got the transfer portal in full gear. Guys quitting on their teams every day. Makes me sick. Don't call it opting out. They are quitting. Every time we try to replace something bad and make it good, we get in trouble. They are quitters. The quitter portal, for the most part, is what it is. All right, a lot to talk about here in the next couple of hours. We do this 25 times a month at least, over 300 shows a year, and we've got great sponsors, great listeners and viewers everywhere, and that's what we're here for, is to serve. Second segment, we'll be joined by Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover. I know he's going to be running around campus today as the signatures start coming in. It's 8:01 a.m., and the kids in the Eastern time zone can start sending their signatures in an hour earlier, so it's really 9 o'clock in the Eastern time zone. Johnny Ballpark Franks joins us at the top of hour number 2, and in the final segment today, Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline, catch him Monday night, 6 p.m. Sports 56 WHBQ, and Super Talk Mississippi. Look, this is the Chad House, ECS House Industries Razorback Report. Chad House, one of my favorite people. Last week, he talked about his favorite time of the year. He gets to write bonus checks to his employees. That is a man who is part of a family business that's over 75 years old, and he is the leader. He and his family, they're just wonderful people. Cherry Valley, Arkansas. Proud to have them as a sponsor, to work with them. And if you like eating and you like catfish, look into it. ECS House Industries makes farm equipment the best in the world. They also make the aerators for the catfish farms. So that being said, another Christmas gift you may want to get, Sewanee1899.org. Sewanee Unrivaled, about that great team. It will rejuvenate your love, your passion. If you don't like NIL and you don't like the portal and they're frustrating everybody, look and watch that movie with your family, with your kids, with your grandchildren. It'll remind you why we love college football. And the Dallas Cowboys, Boston Celtics. I'm telling you, St. Louis Cardinals. Those are popular teams, but they're not as popular as Dudley Dawson. Dudley, how you doing this morning?
Well, I'm doing good. I heard you call me the solstice. I might be.
Yes, you are.
I don't know about solstice, but I'm the soul expert, because I definitely did watch Don Cornelius growing up on Memphis TV, and learned how to get my boogie on, I guess.
Saturday nights was Soul Train. Don Cornelius, Soul Train. That somebody told me one time they were in Chicago, and oh no, we lost Dudley. Have we, Dudley? Do we have you, Dudley? But anyway.
Yeah.
A friend of mine was in Chicago, and he said when they would film multiple shows of Soul Train at a time, and the dancers would be lined up outside the studio with multiple changes of clothes to be on Soul Train. But that was an absolutely awesome, organic. Yeah, Don Cornelius was he was a genius. And by the way, Sunday night's Willie Nelson's 90th birthday. So did you watch that on CBS?
I missed that. I was watching some football and stuff. But
I know, and it's I'm saying we it just pulled me in. It's streaming now on Paramount or Paramount Plus. It was live from Hollywood Bowl out in California, and I mean, Chris Christopherson was out there with Roseanne Cash. They had George Strait and him sang a duet. It was great, you know. If you like that shirt George Strait was wearing, you can get it at Hewlett and Dunn. We'll get to that later. Dudley, all right, I know Otis Kirk focuses mainly on recruiting, but I'm going to throw this at you. I had a conversation yesterday with an Arkansas fan, and he is so frustrated. He said, look at all these great coaches from Arkansas or that have coached here that we never got back to be the head coaches. And Sam Pittman, it's been a wild, 4 years. He's brought in Bobby Petrino. Kind of talk about where the Arkansas football program is right now and what you see them doing differently than they've been doing the previous 4 years.
Well, they lost for one. Went 4-8, and that has definitely, been a detriment to the recruiting class. You lost 4 stars. You were on your way to having a tremendous recruiting class at the start of the year. A lot of work in the off season, and it was coming along pretty well. But then you went into the season, obviously started okay, and then just had the 6-game losing streak. People started jumping off left and right. They've missed on several portal guys, have gotten some. It's not as bad as it seems, but it's not as good as you would want it to. I don't want to act like everything's, Niedermeyer and all that again is always my deal. That,
Right.
But what I will say is that there are several, including it's now, I believe, 5 of the top 10 players in the state of Arkansas are going elsewhere, including Courtney Crutchfield, a wide receiver from Pine Bluff, picking Missouri. Missouri now has 3 of the top 10. Austin Dendy, who's his Pine Bluff teammate, Courtney Crutchfield's, Brian Huff from Valley View going to Missouri, Walker White going to Auburn. You just can't have that, but that's what is. That's what happens. Obviously, Walker White had committed before the season, but that's what happens when you have a bad season. You have to hold on. There are coaches out there, and Arkansas would be doing the same, saying, look, he may not even be the head coach through the middle of the season, and then what are you going to do? Come to us, and, we'll be here and stable and all that. And it is igniting the Missouri-Arkansas rivalry, which, again, we say is a rivalry. Missouri has beaten them 8 out of 10 times, I think, and it's one of those things that it's not. Coach Pittman will come to the press conference today and he'll be excited about the ones he got, and he should be. But the ones that he didn't get are going to be the bigger story today.
Yeah, that's always how it goes. And now you think there's not a rivalry with Missouri? There is now. They're going to get 3 of your top 10 kids from Arkansas. That's what causes a rivalry to really ramp up, I think, Dudley. And I remember I talked to Dudley. I talked to Walker White the night before the Auburn Georgia game. And it's interesting. His entire family is Arkansas. He's got siblings there now, and look, people can go where they want to go, but I'm with you. So I have this discussion. I'm running into Memphis yesterday on the bridge, stuck in traffic. There was a wreck, and Robert Hill is my friend. He's a member of our hunting club, and the Hills have been farming over here since the late 1800s in Heth and Park in Arkansas. I mean, they are diehard, season ticket holders for years, Razorback fans. And he said it's so frustrating and about where they are. And he said Arkansas always does better when they've got the best players from the state. Tim Horton always says when we get those guys like a Weston Dacus from Searcy or, Grant Morgan from Greenwood, and those are both walk-ons. You're in touch with more high schools than anybody. How do the coaches feel? Is it the same thing? We're just worried about him being there if we're going to send one of our kids there, or what 1 or 2 things is it?
Well, I really do feel like the NIL has played a big part, and there are some schools who are being able to offer more than Arkansas. I don't got the actual dollar details for you, but I do know that they made a big thing about rebranding the collective. But now, since that's happened, and again, I point back to the 4-8 season more than anything else. They've lost several kids. A few of them have hinted, not come right out and said it's NIL, but a few of them have hinted that's been the case. Certainly in Missouri, and, I want to go back and say one more thing about them. It also, I don't know that losing strokes the rivalry as much as Eli Drinkwitz and his success. And, he's, as a radio show I was listening to yesterday, said he's just spiking the football. After he gets somebody from Arkansas, he's just spiking the football. Put a video up yesterday for the 41-0, and that's what's going to stroke the rivalry more than anything else, I think, because Arkansas was already losing in that series, and his fans and his players, for that matter, were just sitting around going, "Oh, that's not really a rivalry," LSU was Robert. Well, LSU's not there at the end anymore. It hadn't been for a while. You better get used to it. And I think this is, a trend that needs to be curtailed quickly, whether it's by this staff or new staff that might come in. You can't be, as we said, you can't be losing your best players in Arkansas, but you went out and did a great job in surrounding states and recruiting, and you're losing a lot of those as well. They ended up signing a guy I've never heard of this morning, Crossy Johnson, from wide receiver from New Orleans, Holy Cross, Louisiana. Added him to the mix, which means that he got the scholarship that they hoped Courtney Crutchfield had. He may turn out to be a better wide receiver than Courtney Crutchfield, but that's not what you see going in.
Bottom line is that when you're starting to grab that 2 and 3 guy that you want versus the number 1, that'll hurt. I mean, I watched the end of Gus and then the 2 years of Brian Harsin, and Auburn basically has been on probation the last 3 years. And last year Hugh Freeze grabbed what he could in recruiting, and he flipped some guys late, 3 big time players on signing day. But you start connecting the dots, it's a problem. And they've got good talent in the state. There's not a ton of it, but there's some really good players. And I think if Arkansas has 40%, 45% of their roster from in-state kids, those are almost always 9-10 win teams. And so that and then Missouri coming in, because Eli Drinkwitz is from Alma, Fort Smith, right there on I-40, before you go up to Fayetteville. And who's in charge of Arkansas's NIL program? I don't know this person, but my friend Robert Hill was just saying, why not go get someone like Houston Nutt that absolutely bleeds Arkansas and loves that school, even though he went away to Ole Miss and he coached at Boise for a year. You're going to have a hard time finding somebody that's alive who loves the Razorbacks more and could, get on the phone and set a meeting with everybody.
Yeah. Now, certainly might be some, credibility to that. The one thing I would say, it's tough to sell the product right now. And, it wasn't going into this year, but it is this year, not only because you had the 4-8 season, but you didn't give them hope at the end of it. In fact, you curb stomped at the end of it.
Yeah.
It's interesting in this almost 40 years in the business here. At times I've been called a homer, and at times I've been called a hater, which I take as a badge of honor, really, because
exactly.
I'm doing a decent job. But the one thing is, as I get older, I'll say it like it is. I mean, this is not a good situation at all. Something's going to have to change. I can't put my finger on it. A lot of people wanted a new coach. I get the whole thing with there being much more reduced money, on that buyout next year. Some people feel like they're wasting a year. Some people feel like Coach Pittman needs to get one more chance. I don't make those assessments because I'm a beat writer, and I might have an opinion that I share with my wife privately and the kids and all that. But it's not my place to call for a guy's head. But I will say something has to change. It's just not only did they go 4-8, but they're losing. What it was going to be a pretty decent recruiting class, and now you're depending on the portal really to fill in some holes. And they've gotten some good kids out of the portal. But, they've gotten some offensive linemen. Got one from Tennessee yesterday, Addison Nichols, Francisco Carmona. There's a kid from Blackstone, a kid from Michigan State. So they've gotten some guys there. But the overall tenor of the fan base is watching other kids, including KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders, others, go on to other places. And while they may have criticized them through the years, and especially this year, both of those young men, it is, I guess it's sort of like, I don't know much about girlfriends and wives breaking up with you, but it must be what it feels like.
It's not going to end well if they can't change the pattern. It's not going to end well. And I'm with you. And I think that is definitely a sign that you've earn the respect is that people say you're a homer, you're a hater. It means you're doing your job. Your job is not to be a, sunshine pumper, whatever people want. I don't drink the Kool-Aid. And I think you just laid the case out. When KJ Jefferson, Rocket Sanders does his rehab out in Dallas for a few weeks. When I found that out, I just was like, he's done. There's something in the core wrong in the locker room. And it looks to me like the players have lost faith in this staff. And there's a lot of things, but I talked to a lot of Razorback fans, and they're saying, everybody knows the Waltons, JB Hunt, Tyson. There's but one thing you learn, Dudley, you and I both know this. You talk to these big donors, they'll give, but they're not going to give everything. They want to see more people, just a grassroots populist movement like IPTAY at Clemson. It started in 1934. I paid $10 a year, and that grew to, look at Clemson now, because the ACC's contract pales in comparison to what the SEC gets. But look at Clemson's facilities. They lack for nothing because of their grassroots fundraising. And I think when you've got 20 or 30,000 people giving, you can get a lot done. Yeah, you're going to have those big donors. But again, they want to see other people participate. And that's what Arkansas has got to do. But let's talk about the quarterback situation. And I get a lot of people asking me about that. The quarterback brought in from Boise and Jacoby Briswell coming back from North Carolina. How big a deal is that?
Well, obviously, I've made the statement, and I can get in trouble for it. I don't care. I question Bobby Petrino's decision making, but I've never questioned it on a quarterback. And there were several that he could have chosen and went after. He decided on Taylor Green, a 6'6", 225 pound, 230 guy. That it was interesting. He was the MVP of their conference championship game. Barry Odom, and he was playing against the Barry Odom defense. Which was interesting. But then watched their bowl game the other night, and he wasn't there. That's just how it is these days. As you talked about earlier, these opt-outs and all that. I don't get it, but it's how it works, both with kids going to the NFL and switching teams in the portal now. But I think there's a lot of potential there. Is he a finished product? No, but again, I don't question Bobby Petrino's his decision making on quarterback. So I'll ride with Taylor Green right now. Jacoby Criswell, will certainly get the opportunity to be the starting quarterback. Bobby Petrino's not going to play favorites. And people might say, why are you not saying Sam Pittman? Well, Sam Pittman says he's turning the entire offense totally over to Bobby Petrino. So that makes decision making on that side of the ball Bobby Petrino's, which is he's been known to be a really good guy on that side of the ball, but is that I would say that is that's the only thing since the season ended that has gotten people excited, is the possibility of Bobby Petrino having the Midas touch that he did when he was here last time with offense. We're going to see how it pans out, but other than that, it's I think I've talked many times. You've got to have hope, as in any situation. As a football program, I don't see that the fan base here has a lot of hope right now, and that's going to lead to a bitter off season that social media and radio shows will get a lot of play, because that's where we go to gripe about.
It's tough. Because KJ Jefferson took a lot of money from Arkansas businesses like Armor Bank, and he waits until he gets that last check, and then he bolts. That's why I'm telling you, the free market's going to fix this.
I don't blame him on that. I don't blame him.
I don't.
Bank, had a stipulation where you had to be there when the bowl started, and everybody got what they wanted except the season. But it is. I keep saying, it's not college sports anymore. It's a business. You just accept it, and that is kind of like that waiting for the final check makes it just as business-like as it can be.
Tuberville said it when he was at Ole Miss in '95. I remember him saying, "It's just a business." He'd come from Miami, 8 years down there, a year with R.C. Slocum. And he's right. We love college, but I had a guy, an NIL collective guy at a big school recently tell me, look, Rob, you and I both think our school is special. Dudley thinks his school is special. Ray thinks his school is special. But a lot of these kids we're recruiting, they don't even know anybody that graduated from college. Okay? Their mindset is, can you get me to the league?
Right.
And that, to me, because so few of these guys are going to make it to the NFL. Here's what I see happening. Again, in talking with people off the record, one of them told me what you're seeing with all these guys, used to be, they all go, don't they, Dudley, to the same speechwriter when they're going into the portal. The last few years have been the blah, blah. That being said, I will be entering the transfer portal. Now they're flipping the script and they're staying. You know why? Because a lot of them are getting feedback from the NFL that they're not going to be drafted or not drafted very high. So they figured, look, I've got my degree. I'll come back for another year and collect more NIL. And it looks like I'll love the school. And I hope they do. But the terms of endearment follow the money trail. Always have and always will.
Yeah, and you talked about getting to the league, and it certainly is one of the things that people like to put out there. But also, it's become how much money can I make while in college? So those now two ends of the equation, I guess. And you've got a situation now where you have open free agency. The portal allows you to do this and that. There are several kids, and I think you were talking about it last week, who now the transfer without any problems with the second transfer. So now you go, and so any restrictions they had on that are now. I mean, there were basketball players all over the United States playing their first games last weekend after that judge ruled that the temporary restraining order that the NCAA. Which is an institution but is powerless now. They can do what they want to, and then they came back with another one saying, "Well, we won't punish you if you do go out there." So that was an interesting decision. Kenyon Minfield for Arkansas got to play his first game. Pac-12 all freshman team. He'll probably help them, but man, it's hard for to keep up with the rules now. And I know if it's hard for me, it's probably hard for parents and kids as well. But they do know two things. They want to get to the league, and I can make money in college now.
Yeah. And that you're going to see Carson Beck coming back. Dylan Raiola, that kid was on the deal at Buford High School there in Georgia. I love that. That is cool.
I've been waiting for my computer to come up.
There we go.
It for some reason decided that this morning would be a good time to update. So that's why we had to start on the phone. But I've got the whole Christmas motif going on.
That's the studio. That's at your house.
Yes.
That we got to keep that studio up. Maybe not have the. Now look, I got to admit, when I was in between getting remarried, I kept a Christmas tree up one time.
That's an interesting way to put it. In between getting ready. Speaking of free agents.
Yeah, that was years ago, but I kept a Christmas tree up. You can ask Hallie Wilson and Max until July 31st. I'll get around to it. And it's procrastination might be the right word. But what you're seeing with the marketplace, these kids, they all think they can get to the NFL, whatever. But Carson Beck, him coming back, Dylan Raiola transfers across the country. And I was over in Dunwoody a couple of weeks ago eating at the Mad Italian with my friend Rich from Atlanta. And it's $50 million they've put into facilities at that high school lately. They've got a couple of 5-stars. They did have Dylan Raiola. Well, they do. But they lost in the second round of the playoffs. And KJ Bolden, a 5-star that is currently committed to Florida State. He may sign with them. He may flip to Georgia. But Raiola, turns out his father played at Nebraska, and he's got an uncle on the staff there. He's going to Nebraska. He was supposed to be going to Georgia, But if Carson Beck comes back, these kids now, they're not going to wait. That's
I really don't. I mean, even though he has proven to be a indecisive young man with three different high schools, I think it is, and three different commitments, to college. So it's hard for me to blame him at the end with Carson Beck coming back and the family legacy that they have at Nebraska, and also the opportunity. Nebraska's quarterbacking situation has not been great. Matt Rule, the head coach, has proven himself to be a very good offensive and quarterback coach. So I don't blame that situation at all, but it is certainly the epitome of what we've been talking about.
Yeah. And I wouldn't, you said I can't blame, but I wouldn't trust him. I'm sorry.
But why he does? Why he is trusting him? Because he doesn't have the talent he wants to on his squad right now at quarterback. So he's going to take a shot. That's what you do with great players. You don't do that with average players.
Yeah.
But, and you do it with legacies, and you do it with money. There was a whole lot of money. I mean, Matt Rule even got up and said, "Here's what you have to have a quarterback these days. This is how much you got to pay."
Well, there was a stat put out last week, and again, in talking to people off the record, that said there are 60 to 90 quarterbacks out there in the transfer portal, and they were getting an average of $2 million apiece. And I dug into that. Dudley, I'll bet you a steamer pack of crystals and a gift card at Sonic over in Newport for,
$99 foot long coney.
Damn right. You cannot beat them. I'm fasting until noon today, so I'm really getting hungry. But I'll say this. I think that these that what's going on with the kids quitting and all and moving around. I think that Dylan Raiola kid, they're doing it because they can. Because see, what's happening now is the tail's wagging the dog. When all these adults are saying, well, that's just the way it is. Hey, if you say that's not going to happen anymore, it will stop. And, that's Dylan Raiola, three different high schools. I mean, that kid, you cannot justify that. And I can understand Air Force, Army brats, they move every 2 or 3 years. Yeah, you're moving around the country or around the world. But this kid is championship shopping. And sure, everybody wants to win. But wonder how many close friends this kid has. Just leave it at that.
The loyalty is the thing. I would love to. I mean, I'm sure I'm talking about somebody's kid, just like I wouldn't want people to be talking about mine, but it's my job to do this, what I get paid for and all that. But it is a thing where it is quitting. It is reneging. It is backing out. You can come up with so many words. You can come up with some fancy words that I may not have in my vocabulary that, to rationalize it. But it is just, there's a plethora of these things going on. And it's sad to us guys who've been around forever and whose dads, grew us up on the farm, raised us on the farm and said, no, we're not going to finish the day till we're done. I don't care if you do have a date at 7 o'clock.
Yeah, exactly. See, and this is what, all the hipsters on ESPN and everybody, it's okay. It's okay. Hey, look, let's take a break. Stay with us. Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover, is going to be on with us. I love that background. You got to start. That is really cool. Absolutely love the Celtics.
Hey, when you have the face for radio, you have to find something to distract.
No, look here. Roll over a little bit. Let me see that Celtics logo. That's awesome. I love that. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We'll head down campus, talk with Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover. He is live there. It is National Signing Day. More after this.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, The real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shop's health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought-after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal, and the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am Ari Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
All right, Rob Browne back here, and Jason Caldwell. That's Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net up top there at the Celtics headquarters. That is really cool. And Jason, you were down there on campus today. Anything going on?
Not where I'm sitting.
He's been up all night, I bet.
Yeah, all that stuff's behind closed doors nowadays. So we're just kind of hang out and wait. And we have, Hugh Freeze here in a few hours away, but it's always been kind of a place where like, hey, I just kind of hang out on campus and see what's going on and do those things. So, it's going to be a really interesting couple of hours to see kind of how this thing shakes out for Auburn with, a few of these guys, still waiting to announce, final decisions, guys that are nowadays guys have already committed, but will they sign where they committed, or will they end up going somewhere else? That's really the only drama that happens on this early sign-up period nowadays.
Well, I think about it last night in Auburn Undercover. I got so much respect for what you do and what Dudley does. And a lot of people, we don't have newspapers anymore, but my 95-year-old dad, every day, he gets on your website. That's what they do. They've just transitioned. There's great writing, you, Philip Marshall. I love your musings and your mailbags and all that kind of stuff. You've kept everybody really informed with what's going on. I got Zachary in Memphis. Will Auburn finish in the top 10? Hell, could be 11th or 12th, whatever, but what would that be in the SEC? 5th?
Yeah, if you get a couple of guys, you get a couple of these guys, if you get it where a Maris Williams or an LJ McCray to add to a class, you could be in the top 10. It could be a possibility. So that's kind of what you're waiting on. But before we talk a lot more about Auburn, Arkansas got a couple of guys that I've watched play a bunch of football over the years that I want to give Arkansas fans a little heads up on. Obviously, they know about KJ. I think he's an outstanding quarterback. Great kid, great family. He's going to be a guy that's going to be a really good fit for what they want to do on offense because he can throw it and got a good feel for the passing game. I like him. And Kavion Henderson is a guy that has a big body frame kid as a pass rusher. I think he's a guy that'll end up playing probably at 260 before it's over with and be one of those guys that plays kind of that edge. But you might even be able to slide him inside on some third downs and stuff. So I think a couple of really good guys from Alabama for Arkansas there. Yeah,
Kavion's still doing his recruiting. Arkansas's waiting on the decision of Bradley Shaw, a linebacker who's just picked between him and Clemson. It sounds like he's headed here, but we'll see. And that would be a big add at the end for a program that, as one of my colleagues said, has been hemorrhaging recruits lately.
Yeah, Bradley is a classic inside linebacker. Really good run fit guy. Another great family, good kid. Actually, his brother a long time ago in this business, Bradrick Shaw, came out of Hoover and went and played running back at Wisconsin, and I think finished at Illinois, some other places. So got to know him through his family a long time ago. So that'd be some pretty good additions from the state of Alabama for Arkansas.
Yeah, and look at the numbers. I mean, Dudley, Jason and I talk every week, and text and stay in touch. He's on top of this. I don't know many people that go out. No, Dudley, you're doing 200 high schools in Arkansas. You're hitting them, and when Jason is talking about a recruit, it's kind of like Peter Lynch talking about the old Magellan Fund with Fidelity, because you put the mileage in on the ground. And in Arkansas, I've saw them build a lot with Alabama kids over the years. And Auburn's got a quarterback coming out, Walker White, Jason, and everybody. I've met him one time. You went over there and spent some time in Little Rock. He's been a great recruiter, a Pied Piper per se for Auburn. Do you know whose paperwork is coming? How does it even work nowadays?
Yeah,
now they do it on Twitter or what?
Yeah, basically now schools just tweet it out. That's it. There's no, I mean, they tweet them out when they're in, and or when they're ready for them to come out. There a lot of times they'll be in for a while, and they'll say, "Hey, let's wait on this guy or this guy." But yeah, that's the way it happens. But yeah, Walker's a guy that went over and saw an early game for him this season. Myself and Christian Clemente drove over to Little Rock, got to spend some time with the family, and got some behind the scenes stuff with Walker. And I think one of those guys you look at, and I think a guy that obviously from a competition standpoint, it'll pick up when he gets to the Southeastern Conference, but it does so for everybody that plays high school quarterback to the next level. But I think he's a guy that you look at from a leadership standpoint, from a character standpoint, personality, has the things you're looking for at quarterback, because that's such an important part of it, is having that guy that makes everybody else, kind of be on the same page. He's done it in recruiting. And so I think a guy that you look at for Auburn, you go come in, get an early start, go through spring practice, and kind of get ready for that year number one, and see how quickly you can pick up on things.
Yeah, that is I've known Walker for a long time, obviously known his family here in Arkansas. That is a grown man in a kid's age. And I will say, and this may be a detriment to me or whatever, but he's more mature at 18 right now than I probably am at 60. Right?
I know the feeling.
I'm a little irresponsible every once in a while, but that he's very mature. As you said, once he decided he was going to go to Auburn, he made sure he was going to get a bunch of people with him or do his best to do that. That was a big miss for Arkansas. And I know that Bobby Petrino is sitting here going, man, why couldn't I get to work with him? But, I'm happy for the kid. It's a great family. And he's going to hurt Arkansas down the line. That's just the way it is. And I'm glad he's doing what he wants to do.
Yeah, the family is key. You're right. But had an entire, I don't think people realize, Dudley, you do, but like his entire family is Arkansas people. Like
great grandpa.
All of them played at Arkansas. Dad played golf at Arkansas. I mean, his mom's dad and brothers played at Arkansas. Had a brother played at Arkansas. I mean, like there's such a huge Arkansas connection. But Auburn, when Hugh Freeze came in, they were able to sell him on the vision of being the next guy and being that guy that's going to have a chance to compete. And I think the fit at quarterback for him was good. And it's a big deal for Auburn to get that guy. And you're right, he has done a good job of recruiting other players. And that's the thing that it's hard to think about on our side of it. But when you think about it from a recruiting side of it, quarterback, obviously, you go like, hey, yeah, you obviously want all these good players. But it happens at every position. The wide receivers want other wide receivers to come play with them. And it doesn't sound right in your mind, because you think, well, that's going to take catches away from me. But they want to be involved with other good players. And that's that feeding. It starts to feed on each other. And it happens all the way through every position. And Auburn, for the first time in a long time, has started to get that where you go, hey, great recruit, going to get another great recruit and trying to bring in another great recruit. That's how classes get built.
Yeah. Winning will always be the greatest drug ever.
That's always the greatest thing you can do.
I say that I've never really done drugs, but that's a saying, they always say. I mean, I know that it can be addictive and people want to go where people are winning or there's hope. And that's the difference right now between Auburn and Arkansas. Right now, Auburn has a lot of hope. I know that one of the last plays of the season, nobody wants to hear about, but they, I think turn things around and are headed to hope for the future. And right now, Arkansas, you're hoping against hope, or hoping for hope, whatever the phrase would be.
Yeah.
But nowadays it's easier than it's ever been to flip the switch and to do it. But it's also easier than it's ever been for it to fall apart because there's such a fine line with the transfer portal. People go like, man, you can obviously help yourself a lot. You can also lose an entire roster in the blink of an eye and it'd be over with. And that's the hard part about it right now is that what side of that line are you on? Because it can be blurred in a hurry.
Yeah, if I keep glancing over here, I'm checking Otis's notes and all that as they come in. There's a couple of guys here that I hadn't heard of before today that obviously, they're adding to the list, and Ari Johnson being one of them, a defensive back from Mount Pleasant, Texas, from Canada. But it's as you said, there's not a lot of surprises today. But if there are surprises, it's because you probably lost somebody you want.
And you're right. And one of the things, the best thing I've ever been told is when you've got great guests on, like both of y'all are, and you're on every week, always let them go. Jason, you said something that just was so true. And that is, it's also easier than ever to turn it around. On the flip side, it can also disappear. I've never heard it put like that, but both of y'all are such great writers. That's about the most accurate portrayal, painting or whatever of what's going on now. I mean, it's bipolar athleticism now. I mean, we're just all over the place. You guys can can say, oh, he's in the portal. What? Auburn fans, when Bo Nix went into the portal, what was the reaction originally, Jason?
I would say for the most part, people are like, hey, why would you leave? Well, I can see why you might leave, but we'll go find somebody better. And that's kind of always the way it is.
Yeah.
And it's kind of what I've been saying for a couple of years is that you got to be good around a guy to really find out how good he is. There's only been one Cam Newton. There's other guys that have maybe been as good as he is. There's never been a guy that did what he did with no NFL guys around him. Most of the time, guys get better because they have better players. And the guy's like, okay, they got really good because all of a sudden those guys around them got better. That's been the focus for Hugh Freeze and his staff. And I think it's been the right one going, look, until you get better everywhere else, until you bring in wide receivers and offensive line of those guys, then the quarterback doesn't matter. And I've said it on here before. I say it again. And I'll 100% stand on it. In 2020, 2019, whatever it was when Mac Jones was at Alabama, if you flip places with him and Bo Nix wins the Heisman Trophy at Alabama, and Mac Jones doesn't become the starter at Auburn because of the difference in talent level. He gets sacked 100 times if he's playing at Auburn. Probably never even know who he is. Players matter, and you got to get better around every position. One quarterback can't carry the day.
Yeah. And Jason, you look, I like this question. Edward in Birmingham, is Auburn going to fill their needs in this class? Nobody's done a better job of chronicling Auburn's woes on the offensive line in the 4-year cycle. Dudley, what he does, he'll look at Auburn versus, say, what Alabama and Georgia and LSU were doing, and they're getting 18, 19, and 20 in a 4-year cycle, and Auburn might have 9. That pattern's got to change, doesn't it?
Yeah, they brought in 10 from last December to the opening day. There were 10 new offensive linemen on the roster. Now, some of those were transfer guys. You're going to lose. Yeah. Avery Jones was a 1-year guy. Gunnar Britton was a 1-year guy. But you brought in a couple of transfers that were 2-year guys. Dylan Senda was a true freshman transfer that came in from Northwestern after everything kind of fell apart up there. Then they went out and signed a few high school kids, signed a junior college guy. It's in so much better shape than it's been in the last decade, in my opinion, on the offensive line. And it happened just in 12 months. And so I think for them, you also have to look at things and start going, how does it stack up? This year is a loaded class at wide receiver, at linebacker. Those are places Auburn had to have guys. It's not a loaded class on the offensive line. And it's the hardest position to go recruit. Quarterback is in a position by itself. Offensive line, because everybody wants 5 or 6 of them, and there's only about 20 of them each year that you go, that guy's a legit guy. The rest of them are guys that are developed guys. So there's a very small group of those guys. And just in the Southeastern Conference alone, you're going, hey, people are going to sign 65 of them. Well, if you're signing 65 guys in the Southeastern Conference at one position, there's only 20 really good ones. That means it's hard to get them. And so it makes it really difficult. 25 is a much better class, especially around the footprint for Auburn in terms of offensive line. But this is a great wide receiver group, a great linebacker group. And those are positions that Auburn, if you said, hey, what's the biggest need areas? It was wide receiver, linebacker, and pass rush. And that's where they've helped themselves the most.
Yeah. Dudley, and Jason, I think it's fair to say the 7-on-7 camps might have something to do with this, because it's all about the skill players. Mm-hmm. And the offensive linemen, though, without them, they're like a bank trying to survive without deposits. Do you see that happening now? I mean, you're right. I mean, how many, I watched True Character on SEC Network with my wife, and I mean, she was in tears watching that. I mean, about Brandon Burlsworth. And I remember that kid. I mean, you knew him. And I mean, Jason, you covered him. I mean, there's your dream football player right there. Yeah, and y'all know these kids.
Yeah, I knew him since like 4. My late wife was from Harrison, so and their families knew each other, so I'd known him for a long time. I was amazed at what he became, but was very excited about it. Obviously, I always refer back to old enough. You see stories. The 7-on-7 I think is great for the kids. The wide receivers and all that. But I know back in the day when Bill Keaty was coaching in Newport, we had a very balanced offense. We ran the ball 60 times and threw it 3 times. Once to the left, once to the right, once over the middle. And I caught a lot of those passes because I was blocking for Billy Warren and come out of the backfield, go, move to a slot and catch the pass because nobody was thinking we'd throw the ball. But these days it's just there's so many open offenses that I'm a fan of them. Don't get me wrong, but I'm saying I'll always be born and bred on big time offensive linemen, big time defensive linemen, and winning games that way.
Yeah, Jason, everybody's asking these questions, and I'm getting a lot of texts, and I can't. It's hard to type and think at the same time, but I try. But the questions are: who of these guys, like KJ Bolden, LJ McCray, Amaris Williams, who is Auburn most likely to flip? And on the flip side, no pun intended, who is Auburn most concerned about losing today via a late push by a rival school? Oh, you're on mute. Oh, sorry.
People have asked about Perry Thompson probably the most. I think people still feel really good about him, and the people I talk to around that area still feel like that Auburn is in good spot there. So that'd be really the one that you think about in terms of maybe losing a guy late. I think Amaris Williams is probably the guy that you feel maybe best about. Ohio State, kind of what happened. Because here's the thing you don't know is you don't know if somebody else loses a guy, how much they end up pushing late. Does that impact a guy? Those are things that always factor into this thing, and that's why some of these things go down into the last 5 minutes. So somebody may feel really good about a guy 15 minutes before they sign, and it might change before they sign. I mean, that's how crazy this thing is down the stretch, and I don't think it's ever been as crazy as it is now, even though there's less of those decisions being made because they're done earlier. It used to be, 20 years ago on signing day today, there would be 30 of the top 100 or more, maybe more than that were announcing today that hadn't done anything. Now you're looking, it's about 95% already done, and you still have another signing period to come. So I think I would say Amaris Williams, can Auburn push for LJ McCray? Those would, and then KJ Bolden. I think it would go 1, 2, 3 in that order for me in terms of possibilities for Auburn.
Yeah, Dudley, like Jason saying,
Ashton Bethel Romaine is the guy from Arkansas. He took a visit to Texas A&M this weekend. They really need to get him especially with Crutchfield going to Missouri. So that's the one they're kind of waiting on. As I said, Bradley Shaw is the 2. That will make this it may not make the overall fan base feel better because they're intent on their mindset of there being no hope and this class sucks. That's just kind of a mentality that a portion of the fan base is in. But those two guys, if they add them, would make this a successful day for Arkansas after a not so successful last week.
Yeah. And Jason, you talked about everything's behind closed doors. Remember not too long ago, as the signatures came in on the fax machine, there was jubilation, or there was like, we lost him. But again, is Perry Thompson, has he announced a certain time he's going to make it? I mean,
yeah, I think it's in about an hour or so. I think it's like at 10 o'clock. So I think there'll be a pretty big group of guys starting here in about 10 minutes with LJ McCray at 9 up till about 12:30, 1 o'clock. So I think we'll have a 3 or 4 hour window here where pretty much all these things will get set in stone.
I want to throw this at you. Again, you did a great job. You did the live transfer tracker portal thing, and you look at the production. And Dudley, you could probably say this for Arkansas too, but at Auburn, there were 10 or 11 players that had entered the portal from Auburn's roster, and the total production lost from them on offense was 12 receptions and 1 touchdown and 8 total tackles on defense. We're all old enough to remember, you can be cut. They can say, hey, we only go 3 deep on the depth chart and you're 5. So focus on your degree. And we appreciate what you've done, but there's no room on the roster for you. That's life. I mean, who hadn't been fired from a job? It may have been when you were 16 making pizzas at the Chicks games. I don't know. But Jason, are the kids now, do you feel like when they sign, they're signing for the school because they love it? Or how many of them are signing just because of that big NIL deal, which we don't really know about anyway, do we? And those contracts, we don't know what those contracts look like either, but do you still, when you talk to these kids, get the sense they really want to be at Auburn?
Yeah, I think, I don't know how lots of other folks handle it. The NIL thing, we just, don't really talk about that. Most kids, I wouldn't want to talk about it if I was a kid.
Good. Okay.
We just kind of go, hey, like we've always done it in terms of recruiting. And obviously we know it's going to be an impact. It's going to be a factor. But it's just one factor. Now, for some guys, it might be the entire factor. For other guys, it may be 0 factor. We just kind of figure out how the way we would continue to cover it and go on from there.
Well, I know you got to go. You're busy. Let people know how they can follow you and keep up with you. And also love the way you and Dudley, I think fans need to follow this example. Hey, man, we got our schools, but I like the respect between the two of y'all. Love having you on and appreciate every time you're on, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. Check us out, AuburnUndercover.com. Loads of stuff going on and really just now getting ramped up. And you can also follow me on Twitter at ITATJason. So appreciate it, Dudley. Have a good day, bud. We'll see you soon.
All right. Take care, man. I tell you what, by the way, that set, is that in your man cave in the back, or is that in the den? That wood. Who did that woodwork? That is beautiful.
I'm gonna continue to facilitate this. I put it together myself. It was a labor of love. And that's what we're gonna go with. It's not a background. No, it's not a background. I built that. Yes.
Well, it's the barnwood background in there is really
actually
cool.
It's the barn I grew up in.
I got you. Okay, we relocated. But like Jason said, is it the NIL deals? It's kind of like with these kids. People think they're all talking about it. That's like asking someone how much money they make. You're always like, you don't do that. And I think we're seeing that. And
if you do it, you do it off camera. You don't want to embarrass the kid. That's an easy way to get yourself, off the list of people that they call back and all that. I would say about NIL, would say about NIL, it's widespread now. It used to be you just got a job for somebody's dad, somebody's mom, uncle, girlfriend, baby mama. And those were all things that, weren't widely reported. But those were the ways NIL or whatever worked back in the day. The NIL, it's not no name image and likeness anymore. It's a salary.
Yeah, it is. And the funny thing is, everyone thinks that's all what these kids are talking about when guys like Deion Sanders say everybody wants their bag. I mean, you're going to college, and it is football. It's a business, but we tend to think our school is special. We're myopically focused on our particular school. I do this show, and I mean, Audrey always says I get as fired up about the other schools. Well, I do. I mean, because and I'm talking to you about Arkansas, or I'm talking to Jason about Auburn, or Rodney Orr about Alabama. You get excited because they are the tip of the spear for their fan bases. And what you say has a profound impact, positive, negative, whatever. When Jason Caldwell, I known him a long time, he goes out to so many games, and you're hitting, Fearless Friday high school. When y'all say a kid can play, that's a big stick of swinging,
Well, I don't
powerful stuff.
I don't look at myself as a talent evaluator per se. I'm a reporter, but when I go watch a kid, and I've watched so many over the years, I can tell whether he can help this program or he's not going to help the program. There are several kids that are playing in the NFL that Arkansas coaches didn't decide to offer that I would have, but that's not my job, to tell them who to offer. But it's just a matter of going out and watching and not having any rules. I can go watch a kid as many times as I want to, and I can start going to watch them in the 8th grade if I want to, which is a ridiculous statement, but with AAU basketball and all that. So I don't like to think of myself as a talent evaluator, but I got eyes and I can see, and if a kid's rushing for 360 yards, he's decent.
Yeah.
I'm all about productivity.
Yeah, exactly. Man, and also having a cool background. All right. So like Jason said, it can flip in a second. The hope and despair. I mean, God, here we go with hee-haw, gloom, doom, excessive misery. It really feels that way. I know you got to get going, and appreciate you staying on this first hour. Love it every time you're on. What are you going to look for out of this recruiting class? What Sam Pittman says, the quarterback. I mean, it starts with quarterback. You think he's going to go back and get more hands-on with the offensive line? If those two things are fixed, that gives Arkansas fans a lot of hope, because the defense is going to – their success depends on that offense. So if they get that offensive line and quarterback fixed, there's your chance right there.
Yeah, but it's going to be a long time till we know whether that's going to happen or not. It'll be August 31st when they play UAPB in Little Rock. But I do think that there was a switch at offensive line. I think Coach Pittman trusts Eric Mateos, who will be doing his introductory press conference today after Coach Pittman gets done with the recruiting one. They are all going to be an extension of Coach Pittman. Coach Kennedy didn't forget how to coach.
Yeah.
Coach Mateos, knows his stuff. So he may have a few. I mean, it would be idiotic for him not to offer up some things, but you hire people to run things. He's hired somebody to run the offense. He's hired somebody to run the offensive line. And now he needs to focus more on the details that hurt them during games this season. Just being honest about it.
Yeah, that's exactly it. But, well, I mean, it's happening fast. All right, let people know how they can follow you, because you do great work. It's not once a week. It's every day, the whole staff there at hogville.net. And, folks, if you're a hog or not, you need to be reading the best writers. Here they are.
Yeah, hogville.net is our message board and website. We cover a variety of sports. I mean, this week I've had a story about Scotty Thurman's daughter transferring from North Carolina to play volleyball at Arkansas. That was fun to write. The gymnastics team, it is, we have a variety of stuff. We certainly stick to the so-called money sports as well and write plenty of stories about them, but we try to be full service. And then obviously I've continued writing stories for Fearless Friday, although our segment now will be a little bit on basketball as we kind of move toward that. That's the killer crossover, killer crossover label that they use for basketball.
Yeah. Well, if you don't think gymnastics are big, look at Suni Lee at Auburn. Look at Olivia Dunn from New Jersey. I didn't know girls in New Jersey looked like that.
I'm sorry,
but I don't watch.
I'm not allowed to look at Olivia Dunn.
That's right. Well, she's a fantastic gymnast and a spokesman for LSU and intercollegiate athletics.
She's Paul King's
saying
girlfriend,
that.
isn't she? That's what I know her.
That's right. That's right. Hey, all right, look, Dudley, have a great Christmas. Merry Christmas. By the way, have you ever been over into Grubbs, Arkansas? You know where Grubbs is, don't you?
Absolutely. I once was on a 5 and 6 year old little league team or little T-ball team that won 55 straight games at Grubbs, Arkansas. I could have gone to Grubbs, but they didn't have football.
Well, we hunt over there, and my man Chris Aiken, who's on the show a lot with Avery Banded Outdoors, doing the dog training and duck hunting with your dog, with your retriever videos. And our guy, we got a bunch of our guys over there hunting this morning. You ever eaten at Blue Jays in Grubbs? Yeah. Well, hopefully they'll be there eating an M16 this morning. That's a meat and 16 sides.
You will run into some Dawsons there. I still have some family that live there. My dad's family.
Well, I told him, I said, y'all need to get over there to Blue Jays and eat breakfast this morning. But look, Merry Christmas, Dudley. Blessed to have you on here as my friend and part of this show. You always show up, and I will say this, you're a truth broker, and it's a lot of fun because if I ask you a question, I know I'm going to get an honest answer, whether it's what people want to hear or not. I respect the hell out of that. And I love that background. Let's see it again next Wednesday, okay?
All right, sounds good. Appreciate it.
All right, you bet. We'll be right back with more hour number 2 after this.
Red River Ford and Toyota, located in Wynne, Arkansas. If you're in the market for a new or used car, truck, or SUV, call, go online, or drop by and see them. Located 45 minutes from Memphis, go off the 4-city exit on I-40 and go north about 15 minutes on Highway 1. Easy to work with and still believe in customer service. If you live out of town, they will deliver your vehicle to you. RedRiverFordToyota.com. Just see what they can do.
Strengthen your seed zone this spring with quality tillage equipment from House Industries. Located in Cherry Valley, Arkansas, House Industries specializes in manufacturing superior equipment that will minimize your downtime and keep you working in the field. To ensure the highest quality control, all design, fabrication, and testing takes place in a 99,000 square foot manufacturing facility located right here in the heart of the Delta. Locate your nearest House equipment dealer online at houseindustriesinc.com.
House Industries, breaking ground.
Sidelines with Rob Browne. Talk sporty to me.
All right, Rob Browne back here with you. And hour number 2, Johnny Ballpark Frank's going to check in with us from up in Nashville. Great stuff that first hour, man. Dudley, Dawson, Hogville.net, Jason, Caldwell, Auburn Undercover. Talk about 2 guys got a lot of respect for that know their craft and their business and are just genuinely good people. Those are 2 of the best. Follow them every way you can. A lot going on Twitter, man. I mean, or X, sorry. I call it. But X is on fire right now because a lot of the schools are just posting on their school websites and on their Twitter profile pages as these signatures come in. A lot of chatter out there that KJ Bolden out of Buford, Georgia, 5-star defensive back, one of the top 10 players in the country. He is committed to Florida State. Auburn worked him really hard. Florida worked him really hard. Georgia, now he is a teammate of Dylan Raiola, the kid who's been to 3 schools in the last 3 years, the quarterback who was committed to Georgia, who is now apparently going to sign with Nebraska today because alleged, it looks like Carson Beck, Georgia's quarterback, will be back. He don't want to wait around. Brock Vandegrift left Georgia. He was a 5-star. He's now at Kentucky. Look, think about this. If a recruiting class had 5 5-star players in it, 8 4-stars, and 3 3-stars, that's only 16 players. You would be in the top 5 in the country. Well, that's just what Georgia has as of yesterday entering the transfer portal to leave Georgia. Guys like A.J. Harris out of Phoenix City Central High School in Alabama. He was the number one player in Alabama last year in high school, signed with Georgia, and after 1 year, he's already, see you later. Don't be surprised if he ends up at Auburn, which is 32 minutes away from Phoenix City. Depending on how fast you drive, it could be faster than that. The guy's a big-time defensive back. Cam Coleman's probably working him hard, the number one player in Alabama. I mean, Auburn, put it in perspective, the last few years it was brutal. I think last year when they were of the top 33 players, they signed 4 or 5 of the top 33, but they pulled Keldrick Falk out of Highland Homes, south of Montgomery, where the Hyundai plant is. You see that when you're on the way down to Gulf Shores and Orange Beach and Mobile. It's really 4 or maybe 5 of the top 33. This year, Auburn's got 3 of the top 6 kids in Alabama committed. Now you got to get their signatures. And again, in the world that we live in today, hell, I don't know you want to sign the kid, but look at Georgia. You come in for an audition, for a tryout, and very easily, if you want to transfer, you can just be out the door. That's how it works. And I think that fans all over the country here right now, you're starting to get news breaking. LJ McCray, kid out of Daytona Beach, whose father, I think, is the head football coach at Bethune-Cookman. He's supposed to do something. LJ not signing anywhere today. Florida definitely nervous. Well, we'll see about that. He's supposed to say something this morning at 10 a.m. Eastern. So if that's been postponed, tell you what you don't want to see. A kid that you have committed that obviously he's a big-time player that doesn't sign today on the December signing period, because 95% of them will. If a kid says he's going to wait till February to sign with the rest of his teammates or whatever at a big ceremony in February, you better watch out. You better not pout. You better not cry. I'm telling you why. But you better focus on that one, because very easily something's going on. And we all know now, again, I'm not an NCAA compliance officer, but the NCAA's total staff might be 32 people. And it's a voluntary organization. Your willingness to comply with the rules, you have to voluntarily agree to that. I'm going to tell you right now, you better be paying attention to what is going on signing day. And Arkansas fans, Jason Caldwell's right. Things can flip so quickly. With the portal, you can go out and sign 10, 15 guys, can help you immediately. Look at Michigan State in 2021. They brought in Kenneth Walker III, transferred from Wake Forest. They had Peyton Thorne at quarterback out of Naperville, Illinois. They won 11 games. I think they won 11-2 that year. It was a big turnaround. Then the next year, 2022, they really struggled. Really struggled. Won 4 or 5 games. And in 2023, Peyton Thorne is the quarterback at Auburn. And he struggled to find wide receivers to help him out. Look, this stuff, you're right. You can, and also you can feel like you're on top of the world. And in a heartbeat, you can have your star player or two enter the portal for some reason. But I think what's happening now, like Dylan Gabriel at Oklahoma, Johnny, I think he got feedback from the NFL. He might not be drafted, or at least not very high. He could take NIL money, what Oregon might be throwing his way. 1 more year of college, what the hell? I'll take whatever they give me, because after I'm through, I may not make any money as a pro player. That's why a lot of these guys are staying, because of NIL.
I mean, think about that. If, say, you're making $75,000 a year after college, would you not be happy? So, say you get $1 million. That's like 14 years of making $75,000 a year just to play a year of football, to hang out with all your friends in college, still be the big man on campus. Why would you not want to do that? I mean, look, the NFL will be there. And you can protect yourself with insurance policies. So if you get hurt, then you can protect yourself as far as future earnings are concerned. But why would you not want to stay? I go back to the 70s and 80s, even when you had chances because of the hardship to go to the NFL, a lot of players were staying around for a final year just because they weren't ready. And, mentally, they wanted to be around the college atmosphere still.
Yeah. You ever notice when they interview players that left after the third year, most all of them will say, if I had it to do all over again, the money and all there, I'd have stayed as long as I could, because you need to really be ready when you get to the NFL, physically and mentally.
Absolutely. And now with name, image, and likeness, you have that opportunity to stay around. Hey, by the way, let me just apologize for the technical difficulties. I think the computer, the internet, everything decided to take the early Christmas break. So let me first apologize for being late.
Hey, no problem. Look, a few weeks ago, we were on the road somewhere, and I didn't see the up. Audrey said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you, it was our fault." Microsoft, or they do an update on your computer.
Right. Absolutely.
And I turned it on, and it delayed us. And no, I totally understand it. All right, let's talk about Florida State recruiting right now. They're sitting there in really good position. KJ Bolden's committed. There's all kind of chatter out there. He may flip to Georgia or whatever. His dad apparently is very involved in this. But talk about that core of what Florida State's doing. Are they filling their needs from what you know in recruiting? I know you're not one of the recruiting gurus, whatever.
No, but I keep up. I keep up
exactly.
With the
Yeah.
picture.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, here's the interesting thing. Now, for everybody who's big into recruiting, the new reality is you can't just look at recruiting as far as the normal recruiting route, as far as the high schools, junior college, et cetera. So, in fact, now all the ranking services, whether it's 24/7 or Rivals or whatever, they do a special rankings as far as normal recruiting. Then they do one as far as the transfer portal, and then they do an overall rankings. Now, what I'm looking for is this. Am I looking for the Colorado situation where they have nobody as far as from the normal recruiting process? All their players are coming in as far as through the transfer portal. And here's the bottom line. It's not like you have an unlimited amount of scholarships to offer. So if you see someone taking a spot through the transfer portal, like what Colorado has done the last 2 years, then that means that you can't be bringing in the new players that you can develop your own guys. Now, from my standpoint, I want 4 and 5 stars coming out of high school because the bottom line, especially if I have depth already on campus, I want to develop these individuals. I want individuals who want to be there for the love in their heart for that school. Now, I understand, money as far as your top recruits, that is a big factor, but it should not be the only factor. So with that in mind, I think Florida State, Mike Norvell is one of those guys, and his staff are doing an excellent job. They embraced name, image, and likeness early. They embraced the transfer portal early, and that's why you saw what they did over the last 2+ seasons, and that's why they're riding a 19-game winning streak right now, is because they do it well with the transfer portal, they do it well with recruiting, and who would not want to play football in Tallahassee? I mean, I'm a Florida State grad. I grew up in the state of Alabama as an Alabama fan. Tallahassee is absolutely gorgeous. The campus, as far as the students, wonderful. And and in Florida State, it shows right now because your top 4 in recruiting is Georgia, Alabama, Ohio State, and Florida State. Now, they change in order depending on if you're looking at the recruiting level, if you're looking at transfers, adding into that mix as far as overall. I'm not concerned about the transfer portal rankings because I don't want to see a lot of numbers there. I want to see like what Alabama and Nick Saban has done, handpick individuals for positions. And a lot of that, what we learned today, where your rankings are, you maybe be proud if you're number one. Really, the 24 recruiting class ends after February and ends after the spring drills, because how many players at that point realizing, I'm looking for better opportunities, how many players leave at the end of spring drills, get enrolled during the summer and start their progress with another school for the upcoming fall the same year?
Yeah.
And that's what I'm looking for.
Yeah, what's really funny is how many times coaches are delaying naming a starter at quarterback. You're going to see them start delaying naming starters at every position they can. But the kids are smart. They know where they stand. Right. And they all talk amongst themselves. So that'll be fun to watch. But this thing on here, Gary and Dothan, FSU has a top 10 NIL program. And apparently there are a couple of big ones. There's a bank down there I know that's involved and some other stuff. But look, get the money where you can.
Well, you should. I mean, think about it. You're the state capital. So think about the money as far as lobbyists and everybody else. Yeah. So if you're Florida State and you better have lobbyists there, and a lot of them are part of the board of trustees, but think about the impact, because you see these individuals, you see the decision makers, the business makers all the time, because they are in Tallahassee, because that is the home of the state capital for the state of Florida.
Yeah. And that people don't appreciate that. I mean, I've been to Tallahassee a bunch over the years, and it is a gorgeous campus. God, I mean, you've got live oaks, Spanish moss hanging. I mean, it's gorgeous. It is. You can't argue that.
And the funny thing is, I changed cars from high school to making my trip to go to school. And, my recollection of the state of Florida is flat, right? Beaches and everything else. So I get my first car that's a stick. And then I end up in Tallahassee, and it's like, we're talking about steep hills in Tallahassee in some spots. And so I think that was a major mistake on my part, trying to learn how to drive a stick 2 days after I buy the car and I'm going to Tallahassee with those hills. But it's a beautiful area, and it certainly helps from a recruiting standpoint.
If you can't find them, grind them. That's how I learned how to drive a stick. My dad didn't like hearing that. He had a Fiat convertible.
And I went back, by the way, earlier this year, after my car hit a boulder on the interstate. I switched back.
Oh yeah, I remember that.
We have an SUV in the family, so I went back to the 2-seater Roadster. So I'm happy.
I remember when you hit that on the way down from, what's that, 85 miles from where you live to Huntsville?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's the last thing you want to do at night, because you're talking about, luckily the insurance took care of it, but a nice $400 tow bill. And they're not supposed to tow that far, but it's like, an extra 5 miles or whatever. But I got lucky from that standpoint because, they kept my car for a good 6+ weeks before they decided they can't fix it. It was too much damage. So.
Luckily, you weren't hurt.
So be alert when you're out there, because if you're around, just because you're at night and there's nobody on the roads does not mean there's not debris on the interstate. And the last thing you want to do is hit something like that, a 2 foot in diameter big boulder in the middle of the interstate, because you're not going anywhere and your car is going right through that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's one of the prettiest drives is from Birmingham to Huntsville to Nashville. It's gorgeous. I mean, it's a lot. They had to cut through a lot of rock quarries, a lot of mountains to make
a lot of blasting, blasting going on.
And by the way, this question came up, sports show, but we're both on the road a lot. Where's the Buc-ee's between Birmingham and Nashville? Is it near Huntsville or Madison? Where is it?
It's near, it's like that near 565 going over towards, so it's in between 565 and the Athens exit. So it's right in there.
Yeah.
And if you've never been to one, I mean, thumbs up.
They're incredible. We love them.
You wouldn't have any trouble finding food to eat in there. As far as you can have the dinner in there. I mean, it is amazing. And thumbs up to the way they take care of their employees. I mean, there's a sign showing exactly how you don't have to negotiate. You see the range of what people are making for whether they're overseeing a department or an assistant manager, general manager, and they pay well. So congratulations to them, because back when we started talking about trickle down economy and how rich people will let that money, since they're making more and the money will come down and take care of the middle class, that's just BS. Because if you've ever been around rich people, what do they like to do? Not spend their money. So thumbs up to corporations and the people who run Buc-ee's throughout, because they really do take care of their employees. So I really am proud about that.
Yeah, I mean, we hit Buc-ee's all over the place, and They didn't even come out of Texas until 2019. They started in Jackson, Texas in 1982. And that first one's in Robertsdale, Alabama. So we go to Orange Beach back in September. We stopped on the way back. You can get you a big soft-sided cooler, Buc-ee's, for $20. So we loaded it up with gumbo and etouffee and all kind of stuff my parents wanted. We brought it. It's a great place. All right, college football. Tried to get Bill Hancock on the show, and right now he's pretty. They're not. I mean, he couldn't come on today, but the 4 teams, we know who they are. But Florida State's going to play Georgia in a bowl game, and
well, yeah,
it's tough to get over it, but
by name only.
Yeah. So what I want to know, you for Florida State, they win that game, they're going to be 14-0. Georgia wins it, they'll be 13-1. The fans, that's still 2 big national brands that are going to play. And first off, give me an update on the health of the quarterback room. We know Jordan Travis is out, but there's 2 other guys. The one who was originally second team and got a concussion couldn't play. Is he going to be the starter? Yeah,
he should be. Yeah. And, I still go back to the championship games because of all the excuses. I don't care about the communications inside that building. Remember, they were all together watching football for the first time, right, over that long weekend of the conference championship weekend. I want to know what those conversations were like. I don't care about the conversations inside the room because, Rob, you and I can discuss something off the air. And then we get in, we have a different take. I mean, how many people do you know are afraid to really voice their opinions about anything on the air publicly, but they'll tell you privately what they think. And that goes on all the time as well. I'm more interested in what was said during the course of the afternoon and that Saturday night outside that room. That's what I'm interested in. And the fact is that the target's always changing. I mean, if you're somebody who's really big into guns and you're aiming at a target and you're trying to adjust your sights, and then so you see that you're off by a couple of inches, you make the adjustment and then you're okay, right? Well, what happens if you're trying to aim at that target and after you make your adjustments, the target gets moved again? So then it's like, okay, where am I now? And so that's really what we look at with what has happened over the last 2 years. Because we're told one thing 2 years ago why Cincinnati was in there. And remember, Cincinnati was not in a Power 5 conference, but yet they took care of business for everybody on their schedule. So they deserve to be in. But everybody agreed if they were in the Big Ten or in the SEC and played a schedule like that, then they would have 3 losses next to their name. So they didn't play anybody. Well, they beat Notre Dame. Well, Notre Dame, the team that they beat in September was not the Notre Dame in October and November. If you remember, Notre Dame had trouble getting out of the gates and they adjusted. But then there Notre Dame was with 1 loss. And, I'm fine if you went with the 2-loss team. To me, a 2-loss Power 5 conference team was better than Cincinnati in 2021. And then, so it really comes down to this. If you're not in the Big Ten or the SEC, you've got problems because they really don't respect anybody other than the Big Ten and the SEC. And that's why these conversations have escalated, not just with Florida State and the ACC, but you look on down too. We're talking about 7 teams that are looking to what is out there for them. You don't see teams now leaving the Big Ten, do you? You don't see teams leaving the SEC. You see teams leaving and wanting to leave in the other conferences, and there's a reason for that because they know they can't compete at the national level if they're not in the Big Ten or the SEC these days.
You're right. And we all know what Chip Kelly said, but I've been saying this for a long time. Make football a national sport and all the non-revenue sports stay in the conferences where they are. Because I think look, we may be seeing it, but I wouldn't be surprised if in a year or 2, maybe 3 years, we don't go back to that because once they start the traveling, Rutgers to UCLA for volleyball on a Wednesday night, that's just going to be brutal. That is people that don't, it's fun when you travel occasionally on a plane. Johnny, you and I, when we grew up, people wore a coat and tie on the plane.
I dressed up. I still dress up when I'm on a plane. I know
you do because you're a class act.
Well, I'm not wearing the tie, but I'm still looking the part. I'm not wearing flip-flops and a cap.
Yeah, now they all look like they're dressed from the casting of Sopranos, you know. And, I mean, just a bunch of slobs in warm up suits and taking
No,
up
it's more
two
like
seats.
it's more
Yeah.
like Fast Times at Ridgemont High.
Yeah, I mean,
Spicoli.
it's
That's
just
what it's like these days.
it's how gauche can I be when I fly versus, you know, as a kid. I mean, it was the family people dressed up. You know what? We'll go back to that. But here's a good question, Tommy: is Mike Norvell locked into FSU? I'm assuming. Be careful with that. He's talking about his contract, but I think emotionally, he's as happy as he's ever been in his life, probably since he had his kids.
Well, it's one of those things where he is happy as far as money wise, and look at what they're doing as far as helping him have all the pieces he needs to be able to recruit. I mean, how many places that can you go in this country to coach college football that you know you have the resources and a product to sell that can get you a top 5 recruiting class? Mike Norvell has that at Florida State. I mean, literally, you need 2 hands, maybe. I don't even know if you need 2 hands to really to describe the different programs across the country that have those opportunities, because usually you have too many cons associated with them. So if you're Ohio State, if you're Texas, you're Oklahoma, if you're Alabama, Florida State is obviously in that list as well. Gainesville, Florida. These are the programs that have the complete package to be able to sell to a recruit. And that's one of the things that I'm really admiring what, Hugh Freeze is doing with Auburn. I mean, here we are looking at it. They're just on the outside of a top 10 recruiting class. Now, because you're in the SEC, what does that mean? That means there's still 5 programs ahead of you. Because look, in the top 24 in the country, I mean, there's 16 teams in the SEC, right? 12 of those 16 are in the top 24 recruiting classes in the country. Let that sink in, because there's only 130 in that family of total FBS teams out there. But we're talking about 75% of the teams in 2024 are in the top 24 in the nation. And so you could have a decent recruiting class compared to other conferences, but that may get you the middle of the road in the SEC.
Yeah. Hey,
but as far as Mike Norvell is concerned,
yeah.
Mike Norvell, look, it's about anything. Nick Saban could be lured away. I mean, the right money, right package, right opportunity. I think a lot of this has to do, Mike Norvell is that point. If you're a coach that's worth anything, you're not coaching for money. You're coaching to see what you bring to the table, how you can compete with the best of the best. And so Mike Norvell wants that challenge. That's why it was so disheartening for everybody associated with the Florida State program to have what happened to them. Because I will still go back to the fact that if Georgia had won against Alabama, Texas would not be in the 14 playoff. Florida State would have been in that number 4 position. But you couldn't bring Alabama, which they were there no way they were leaving Alabama out, but you couldn't bring Alabama because Texas beat them in September. Are they the same teams now? No, Alabama is much better. Alabama will win the national championship this year, but you couldn't bring Alabama without bringing Texas, and that's why Florida State the system was set up in the beginning. It was already set up to fail, and it just happened to fail in its final year.
Yeah, it's somewhat brutal the way it works. All right, look, we're going to be joined in just a moment by Yancy Porter, Rebel Yell Hotline. Brought to you by the Vitamin Shop, 5338 Goodman Road, South Haven, Mississippi. Open Monday through Saturday, 9:30 a.m., 8 p.m., and Sundays, 10:30 a.m. to 7 p.m. They've got all kinds of specials going on right now, but let me tell you something. This one's in South Haven. They're building one in Oxford, Mississippi, going to open up probably early March. They've got nutritionists, specialists, health specialists. When I go into the Vitamin Shop a lot, I buy shot blocks, I buy goo. My wife and I buy probiotics. This is a serious store. They have great products. If you work out, you take care of yourself. We all should. You need to be going to the Vitamin Shop. All right, we'll take a quick break. Muscle Man, look at Johnny there showing up the guns. All right, Yancy Porter, Johnny Ballpark, Franks, Rob Browne. We'll be right back after this quick commercial break.
In a perfect world, you'd set a health goal and results would happen overnight. In this world, the real world, it takes time, dedication, and the right support to achieve your best self. The Vitamin Shoppe health enthusiasts are here to make sure you're not wasting a single moment on the wrong supplements. From the highest quality sports nutrition and superfoods to the most sought after trends, you'll find a huge variety of science-backed solutions for every goal. And the people to help guide you along the path to greatness.
Unbelievably, every 2 minutes in our communities, a child is either bought or sold for sex. I am R.A. Dickey, board member for the Nashville Anti-Human Trafficking Coalition. Join me and millions of others in our fight against human trafficking and for its victims by helping to educate the most vulnerable among us, our middle and high school students. Go to nhtcoalition.org, become a partner, and help keep our families safe, because none of God's children are for sale.
Curve everything else. Win, 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 win. These ops ain't lit. Mommy. Win, 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 win.
All right, Rob Browne back with Yancy Porter and Johnny Ballpark Frankson. Yancy, we had Dudley Dawson, Hogville.net, Jason Caldwell, Auburn Undercover on in the first hour. And no drama at all. It's National Signing Date. I guess everything's calm and all is well down in Oxford at Ground Zero for National Signing Date. We also got the portal going on, but any news you want to pass along to people that are watching and listening here on this Wednesday morning edition of Sidelines? Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas to you too. Happy holidays to all the listeners out there. You know, really everything on Ole Miss's front is pretty calm. Actually, it's unusual. You know, all the how you hit the barn, so to speak, when they picked up 10 portal commitments last week, four inside the top 10. And everybody's waiting on the number one portal, Walter Nolan. He's they believe that there's a really good chance he'll sign with Ole Miss today. And so, you know, on the high school front, everything's been wrapped up. They picked up a couple more high school commitments last week, including an offensive tackle that flipped from Miami and a quarterback that flipped from A&M. And you know, it's relatively common in Oxford, Mississippi.
Yeah, I have a quick question for you. When with regards to Lane, has he talked about the fact, because he is bringing in when you look at the transfer portal, not just picking guy here, guy there, he's bringing in a significant number of individuals through the transfer portal. Does he look at a player coming in from the transfer portal the same way as somebody who's coming out of high school with regards to where they are mentally making that decision? Because if you get too many out of the transfer portal, then you have a chance and opportunity to mess up the entire chemistry of that locker room.
Well, I mean, you look at it, Ole Miss only has, they have 10 portals that they have brought in so far. Last year, they brought in 37. The year before that, they brought in 28. So he hasn't had a problem. I mean, look, that is what's making Lane a little bit ahead of the curve, right? He has learned how to adapt. You ask him personal, he hates the NIL and the portal personally, but he's going to use it to his advantage. And he's learned how to be able to mesh the returnees and the new guys. And that's kind of what's made Lane, right? I mean, he's just been a step ahead of everybody else when it comes to the portal and NIL.
Yeah, and I feel the same way. I detest the NIL and the portal, but you got to make it work because it's the law of the land. And just the thought of somebody not following through on a commitment, it sickens me. I mean, I got 4 kids. Trust me, if you're not raising them to follow through, okay, well, as a football coach, I've heard Lane Kiffin say, hey, it's different. You used to have a bunch of guys that had been in that locker room 4 or 5 years fighting and, struggling and going through a lot together. Now you look around and you don't know people. I mean, hell, think about this. Pat and I one time said, Coach Bryant, he was being criticized for making a call people didn't agree with in a game. He said, let me tell you something, how crazy it gets on that sidelines. He goes, I remember being on the staff one time in Alabama, and Coach Bryant was hollering for Leroy Jordan to get in the game. He said he'd been gone 3 years. He said, he goes, well, Leroy. He goes, well, because he's been gone. But that stuff happens. But Lane Kiffin is a mad scientist, Yancy, and come back to us. But, and Johnny, that's a great question you asked about the portal and how they're making all that stuff work. You gotta, you may not like it, but you can embrace it and make it work to your advantage.
Well, talk to a former coach. If you talk to a former head coach at this level and, you ask them about what coaches today have to deal with, I mean, they're earning their money. I mean, it's, especially if you're in a competitive conference like the SEC and the Big Ten, I mean, you have to balance all of this. And yeah, you may hate it and not like the system, but you better be good at both. And that's why we see a decline in Clemson in the last couple of years, because Dabo Swinney has not embraced the transfer portal. You're not going to win alone with just the normal routes of recruiting. You're not going to win that way. So if you want to compete in today's college football world, you better be good at both. And you don't have to bring in the numbers like what Lane Kiffin has brought in. In fact, I don't even like that idea. But you better be able to at least bring in a handful of players that you can fill positions, help depth, whatever, and increase some competition. Otherwise, you're going to be looking for a job or be out of work as far as a college football coach is concerned.
Yancy, as you left off,
I think the difference that we're seeing this year in the portal than the prior years is the prior years that Ole Miss is really targeted smaller conference players that were highly successful on that level. And this year, they're bringing in 5 players that were all SEC last year, 2 players that were all Big 12 last year, a player that's all ACC last year. So they're bringing in proven guys that have been highly successful on the Power 5 level. And honestly, there really weren't many of those players available in the prior years. Schools were able to keep the highly productive players and the Power 5 level at home. But this year it's been different. And Ole Miss has really done a great job of being able to land those guys. And they smell blood. They think they've got a legitimate chance to win the national championship next year. And they have really stocked that defense in. They picked up 3 all-SEC players on the defensive line there, an all-SEC player at linebacker there, 2 all-SEC defensive backs. I mean, they are going defense heavy. It's interesting, and Rob and I have talked about this before. Lane puts a great value on that defensive line. They're bringing in 9 defensive linemen in this class. Everybody thinks when you think Lane Kiffin, you think offense, but he knows the value of defense, that defensive line. And look, the hire Pete over there at Alabama's defensive coordinator was the best move Lane Kiffin ever made. I mean, they went from, I believe, 86 to 39 in year 1 in points allowed. So, again, they're going for broke. They're going for it all. They want to win a national championship next year at Ole Miss.
Rob and Yancy, I mean, let me answer this question. Name me a program that's won titles, conference titles, national championships, they're not strong on the offensive line and defensive front, because you can't name one. And that's the thing. Your teams, I don't care about who you're bringing back at quarterback, wide receiver, running backs. Same thing applies as far as the defensive side of the ball with just a great secondary. If you're not solid at the line of scrimmage with the offensive line, the defensive front, then you're not going to win many games.
No question about it. And right now, what really exposed Ole Miss last season was that Georgia week. They had, their all SEC right tackle went out during practice Tuesday before the Georgia game, the first series. Their other tackle went down the second series. Their center went down. And I think the game was 14-all when those three guys were out of the lineup, and they were dead. I mean, those new guys that came in there. Now, Lane plays the same 5 offensive linemen, the same 3-man wide receiver rotation. He uses that pro mindset. So it was the first time that season that line, second string, most of those guys had even played that season. So it was new, but it was over. I mean, and they didn't play well the next 2 or 3 games after Georgia on the offensive line. There definitely was a difference in the depth between that first and second string. And as you said, you don't have that first and second string defensive line, offensive line on the line of scrimmage. You're not going to win any titles. Now, I think they've more than solved that problem on defense. And they didn't really have that issue last year on defense. They were pretty deep on that defensive line. But they didn't have those true difference makers like the number 1 player, right? Walter Nolan or the 2 all-SEC defensive ends they're bringing in from Tennessee and Florida. They didn't have those true difference makers, so that's going to add some juice to that defensive line. But they still got some issues to address there on the offensive line because you can't expect high school guys to come in there and be difference makers and be in that 1 or 2 deep where you can hold up against the Georgias and Alabamas of the world. So they're going to have to. They did address one. They got an interior guy there from Southern Mississippi, but they're going to. They've got to get at least 2 more. Some guys that are proven commodity guys that can hold up and give them some depth on that offensive line if they want to be a true contender for the national championship next year. Either that or they're going to have to get damn lucky and not have any injuries along that offensive line. And we all know that is impossible.
Impossible. Well, you got to be 2 or 3 deep on the front 7 defensively for sure. Johnny's right. Both of y'all are. And you get Walter Nolan. He was at St. Benedict. They hid him out there in Cordova. Then he goes to Tennessee, to Knoxville, goes to Powell High School, and ends up at Texas A&M. I got to ask both of y'all, is there anybody still on the roster at Texas A&M? We got a lot of A&M listeners and viewers, and they're great. I love them. I do think their administration is they spend money and they piss it away like the federal government, but their fans are great. You talk about loyalty. My God, they wrote the book. But every day you are seeing another player or 2. I thought Mike Elko, they were all swinging and swaying and stuff at that press conference, and looked like it was a marriage made in heaven. And all I hear about is people leaving, guys. That's a terrible sign. If that's a harbinger, today's word wealth word of the day, a harbinger of things to come, or if that's the canary in the coal mine, they got problems.
Yancy, isn't that that's one of the cons at having the signing period before Christmas, is the fact that a lot of these programs that are not happy with their programs, they're letting their coaches go. And by the time they bring somebody in, these individuals who aren't happy with their situation, like, for example, these Texas A&M players, they're already putting their names in the transfer portal before they even had any chances to be recruited by the new head coach. And so not only if you're a head coach trying to recruit the new players coming in, you better be also having these strong conversations, trying to convince players that you need, as far as the team is concerned, to stay where they are.
Yeah, and look, Elko's a hell of a coach. I think they're going to be fine down the road. I think they are going to hit a little bit of bump over the next year or 2 because they have had so many players transfer, talented players. But, let's be honest, Elko probably wanted to weed out a lot of these players himself and start fresh and have a unified locker room, everybody together,
right.
One heartbeat. And I really think that if A&M really wanted to keep a lot of these players, they probably could at least kept some of them, right? I think Elko just said, "Hey, let's start over. Let's get my players in there. We got a bunch of millionaires on this team, and they got loyalty to Jimbo or Coach Robinson that was there, the defensive line coach, and." Let's start over. And I think that's really what's going on. And I think it will take a little hit there at A&M. Record-wise, it might be pretty similar to what they've done the last few years, right? They've been going 6-6, 7-5. They could probably still get to that kind of record, but they're not going to be nearly as talented as they were. And then I think in year 3 or 4, you really start seeing things taking off, kind of like what I predicted with Hugh Freeze. But, I mean, my goodness, I mean, Hugh Freeze is – I mean, I knew when watching those receivers, I knew it was just last year at Auburn. It was eating at him. And honestly, I haven't kept that closely with Auburn recruiting. I looked over there. They got two 5-star receivers, 3 4-star receivers. I mean, he came in swinging like I knew he would. I imagine Elko's going to kind of have a similar path over there. Not quite the recruiting prowess as of Hugh Freeze, but he'll do a really good job.
Well, I like what you just said, the loyalty to the Jimbo Fisher staff. And when you're throwing around money, and I know A&M's not the only school throwing it around for NIL, if that's the only thing that got you there, that's all you care about, and you don't care about this staff, it'll lead to a lot of losses in a toxic locker room. I think y'all.
The reality is, when I worked in college athletics, we knew inside, especially I was always on these search committees for replacing head coaches. But if you talk to the players, when you're in media relations, you get to become really close with all the players. Yeah, but sure. You could be talking about a basketball team, for example, that's 4-24, and they, these are 18 to 22-year-olds, right? But these players don't like change. They don't want a new coach coming in. They're loyal to the coach that's already there, and that becomes the problem when in Texas A&M's case, you're bringing in Mike Elko. What you have to avoid is all of a sudden now my mindset is not with Coach Fisher and that staff. My mindset is, what about me? I got to take care of me, because there's no loyalty to the new head coach. And that's what the new head coach has to do as far as change the culture. Look, a lot of these players can't make that adjustment. And that's why now it's easy for them to go elsewhere, for they get to pick where they want to go. I mean, that's just like if you and I, we had jobs out there and we get new management. Well, I took a job with the management that was there that hired me, right? But then you get in a situation where all of a sudden they replace the management with the new group, and it's totally against what you were comfortable with. It's totally against your direction as far as mentally how people do business. And then you make the decision, well, I did not take on a job here with these individuals. And that's why you see sometimes these, employees become disgruntled. Same thing with these football players, basketball players, et cetera.
Yeah. And look at it. And look, guys, you get to get paid big twice, right? I mean, let's be honest. Yeah. They get paid big to go there at A&M. And I'm just using A&M as an example.
Yeah.
You get a new staff, you can get back on the free market, right? It's like free agency. I mean, imagine the NFL, you get I don't know, just name any player. A.J. Browne, gets $70 million up front. And imagine a year later, they changed staffs and the NFL allowed him to get out of his contract and get another $70 million up front from another team, right? I mean, it's a chance to get paid twice. And so the players, like you said, their loyalty is with the prior staff. They really don't want a new staff. And they got an opportunity. I mean, these guys, for the most part, have never had more than a couple $100 in their bank account. And now they're getting NIL money. And a lot of these players, even as good as they are, they're not going to make it to the NFL. So if you can get you a few $100,000 twice in your college career, I mean, again, like I said, he doesn't like this, but it is what it is. And so it is the system right now. So I can't blame the players either.
Yeah. And I think what we better be careful of, though, is giving these guys all this money. And do they care about the bowl games if they're not in the playoffs? I know people aren't looking at it, but I'm hearing from people saying, man, it's tough, especially if these guys are getting $100,000 a year in NIL. They don't want to go to the bowl game. That's kind of that. We got to change that, because the fans own college athletics. And if you think I'm wrong, you watch what happens. How many times can you go to the well to get people to give to NIL? And if there's no ROI, they'll stop. The free market will correct it. I promise you. I manage people's money for a living. I'm telling you, you keep putting them in crap. You better not do that to begin with. You have to do your due diligence. But you better put them in stuff that works. And you have a responsibility to do that. And the fans will decide, because everybody loves to spend other people's money. Opium. Okay. The big boosters, talk to those big boosters. And then what they'll tell you, I have had enough of being told I need to pay for everything. You better get you a grassroots movement like that Grove Collective you got. Go ahead, Johnny. I just wanted to throw that in.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, I go back to 2 years ago when Lane Kiffin hears about the money Bryce Young was making, and he had yet to start a game for Alabama. This was a month into name, image, and likeness. And you could tell by his reaction, Ole Miss was not prepared. He kind of realized that we don't have individuals yet to pay $1 million for someone to play football for us. I was curious, Yancy, how has that changed over the last 2 years? Yeah, he may not like name, image, and likeness, but obviously seeing how he's doing with recruitment, especially with the transfer portal, it seems to me that he has found ways with the boosters to now embrace name, image, and likeness.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss has one of the more aggressive collectives in the country right now, and they got really lucky. Walker Jones, a former player that handled contracts and handle agents and stuff like that for Under Armour for, over a decade, became the CEO of the company. And they're, it's one of the better, if not, and I don't mean this like being biased, if not the best collective in the country. It has allowed Ole Miss to do things that, a lot of people didn't think were able to do. A lot of people are surprised that Ole Miss has this type of money to be able to get these type of players. And that's all due to the collective and what Walker Jones and the fans have done. I mean, I think they're right now just sitting at, right at 8,800 members, which is very high for schools, even in the SEC. I think Tennessee's is sitting at right now 4,000. So we all know how many more fans and alumni that Tennessee have than Ole Miss. So they've done a great job of selling that product to the fan base, and the Ole Miss fan base is responding. Rob, now back to your point about players playing in bowls. The way that you nipped that in the bud, the reason a school like Ole Miss is not having the opt-outs is because you have that in their contracts in the NIL. If you don't play that bowl game, guess what? Your payments stop. You don't get paid.
Yeah.
So that is the advantage, right? There are advantages to NIL. So now, like you said, you can put things in contract to force them to play unless they don't want to get paid. You're getting a lot of players now, and especially in this COVID era, which we're still in. Seems like we'll have another couple years where you can have 6th, 7th, 8th year players in college football. You can these type of players that Ole Miss has been able, it's not only what they brought in, they're bringing back everybody, that are 5th and 6th year players that had any kind of eligibility left that were productive. They were able to retain them because of NIL. You can't bring a player back for a 6 year under normal circumstances unless you can pay them handsomely to make it worth their while. They're tired of playing college football after 5-6 years. So
the bottom line is they're playing in the Senior Bowl. And look, I understand, and I really agree with the whole thing with the name, image, and likeness, making that a part of their contract. But let's just say, because of all the money out there with these bowl games too, let's take the top 100 players. You could give each player $50,000, right, at $100,000. So if you look at it from that standpoint, get a pool of money and say, make sure you keep the top 50, top 100 players, and you can do it as far as these draft polls of where people are as far as rankings are concerned. And that way, use that pool, pay these individuals to play in these bowl games, especially the ones that don't mean anything other than the pageantry of the bowl games. Because that, by the way, that's all changed now. Bowl games, when I looked at bowl games, it was special in the 70s. You can't tell me when you're looking at 80 plus teams making bowl games and there's only 130 out there. That would be like 200 plus teams making it as far as the big dance in March for the basketball tournament.
It's 88 out of 133 is what it is.
Yeah,
it's
65%. Well, here's the deal, though. People are talking about the bowl games not meaning much anymore outside of the playoffs. What about when it goes to 12 next year? Right now, the New Year's 6, right, is still prestigious. But Will be next year. I mean, I guess the New Year's Six will be the whole playoffs, but then outside of that, those 12 teams, think about how much it lessens the value of the bowl games next year and how much of even more of a problem it would have been for players to opt out. But you know what? I'm seeing less opt outs now because, again, these collectives at whatever universities are smart enough to put that in the contract. If you want to continue to get paid, you're going to play.
I would love to have known, because last year, remember, Bryce Young played, Will Anderson played in their bowl game against Kansas State representing Alabama. I don't think anybody's ever asked this question. I'm curious to see if that was a part of their contracts, that to get paid, they still had to play in the bowl games.
What do you think?
Absolutely shocked if it were not. I'd say the odds of that are 99.999%.
And I've been saying this all along because, again, in my wealth management practice, that gets the kids' attention. You do an incentive-based trust. They've got to get out of bed and quit smoking weed all the time and get a job if they want money from the trust, or it's an age-banded trust. I mean, they can be 60 years old following the panic around or the dead before they were all dead. But trust me, we deal with that, and we have these discussions. So absolutely, Johnny and Yancy, you're both. I'd absolutely think, because I've been saying, if that's in the contracts, school pride, and it's forgetting if the players are going to quit on their team and not play in the bowl game, then you know what? Don't charge money for the tickets or the hotels or food. Okay. Because the fans are invested. You can't just be a taker as a player. I know you've been there, but you're right. And you know what? They can get hurt their entire career.
Florida State still has a chance there's 10 polls that are recognized as far as declaring national champions in football. Florida State has a chance to be number one in 2 of those. It only takes one to be a national champion. And certainly if they beat Georgia,
ask Alabama.
Back to the old days.
Yeah, we're still trying to get rid of. By the way, there's a campaign going on to, if Bama wins the national title this year, is to keep that number at 18 and get rid of that 1941 title, a team that was 9-2, finished 20th as far as the AP poll. Yeah. And yet one of those obscure, the House Gate or whatever, I think they had relatives in Alabama. And I'm a Bama fan too, but let's don't claim 1941 because they had no business ever being declared national champs. It was a mistake made, by the way, in the 80s on campus there inside that building, athletics building. And it's a situation that needs to be rectified.
Yeah. And they were 20th. There were 32 services that gave it to Minnesota that year and won the Holgate system. He was some math geek that lived in the basement in his parents' house and came up with this formula. And
they didn't have calculators, so I don't know how he must have messed up in his calculations.
Alabama's got the greatest tradition in all the college football championships and all that. So, I mean, this is not an attack on Alabama. It's just saying 1941, you're 9-2. The SEC champion in 1941 was Mississippi State Bulldogs. I mean, and they lost to Vanderbilt and Mississippi State that year. Again, we're 9-2. I mean, numbers that Alabama could claim 27 national championships. Okay. Claim the one in 1966. If you're going to claim one, give back because they got screwed so bad in 1966.
And 1977, the same situation.
Yeah,
so
exactly. Notre Dame from
that
41 to first.
That 41, Bama's won too much. I mean, I don't know what's more embarrassing, them claiming a championship that year or Ole Miss claiming putting a banner up in the stadium for co-champs in 2003 when they both went 7-1, LSU and Ole Miss. But LSU beat Ole Miss and went to Atlanta. And that really, really irritates a lot of Ole Miss fans when they look at that banner in the stadium. They're like, "That's."
Yeah, no, it is. Look, this is what Johnny, you're right, and Yancy, y'all are both right about college football. This is what it fuels it year round. Look, we have run out of time. Great stuff, Johnny. Unbelievable. Same with you, Yancy. Both of y'all. Merry Christmas. Let me just say this. Johnny, let people know how they can follow you, and Yancy, let them know how they can follow you after Johnny speaks.
On X and Twitter, you can follow me at BP Frank Show or follow me on Facebook at Johnny Ballpark Franks.
Yancy. Hopefully, Yancy, you there? Okay. Once, twice. I think he's out. He may be out. But anyway, catch him Monday nights, 6 p.m., Sports 56 WHBQ in Memphis, and also Super Talk Mississippi, Rebel Yell Hotline. He really, and that whole crew, Chuck Rounsville, the Ole Miss Spirit, Harry Harrison, Gary Darby, Gordon Ford when he's on there, do an unbelievable job. Most often we see the face of Christ and least among us. We live in the greatest country in the history of the world. You know what? Johnny and I, we're both very blessed. We all are. You may not think you are, but you are. Go out and bless others. You never know what kind words and kind deeds can do to change lives. That's what we're supposed to do. We're out of here. We'll be back tomorrow. Got another great show. Now go pay attention to National Signing Day. And Chief Osceola, I think, is going to be pretty damn happy. I think he's going to plant that spear at the 50 within his recruiting classes ranked up. But anyway, we're out of here. We'll see you tomorrow.